The bereaved relatives of soldiers who died in the Iraq War have criticised Tony Blair's apology. RT UK spoke to Roger Bacon, whose son, Major Matthew Bacon, was killed by a roadside bomb in Basra.
We've known all along that the interpretation of the intelligence that was given to him was was dead dodgy anyway, and it's long overdue that he should do so. But it doesn't seem to me that it's a fall. He's not saying I'm sorry that we went to war and that we ought not to have gone to war. He's not doing that. It's a partial thing, and that certain aspects of it. He apologised for bad judgment, I suppose, is what we're saying here, not for the fact that he actually wanted to go into Iraq in the first place. And it makes you wonder why he had to take himself off to America to do it, and whether in fact he was in some way coaxed into doing that, or suggested that it might be a good idea that he did it.
London mayoral candidate George Galloway co-directed The Killing of Tony Blair. The documentary film was part of his campaign to get Blair tried for war crimes in an international court. He joins me in the studio. George, thanks very much for joining us. You're obviously no fan of Tony Blair. Has he won you over with this apology?
No, it's not an apology. It's a non-apology apology. It's a pre-buttal for the forthcoming Chilcot report, which we must presume that sometime in our lifetime is going to deliver. It was a set of weasel words, but even if it had been an apology just doesn't do it. You apologize if you bump someone's car or stand on their toe. If you're responsible for the deaths of 1 million people and for sending fanatic extremism cascading around the world with no end in sight on either of those fronts, then an apology just doesn't do it. He has to face justice.
You mentioned the timing. Is this a preemptive strike before we get some, he gets some bad news from the Chilcot inquiry?
Yes, it's a pre-buttal so that we realise that he has been listening, that he's learned a thing or two and accepts a thing or two. For me, the only significant thing in what he said was his admission. Could hardly do otherwise, but he hasn't done it before, that the rise of ISIL and Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Syria is directly connected to the decision that Bush and him made to invade and occupy Iraq. That's an important admission, and it's one that should send him to The Hague.
Well, before, he did absolutely refuse to admit fault, so this must be a victory of some sort. And isn't it better late than never?
Well, it is a victory of some kind, but it's not enough. The families that you've just been listening to, and the Iraqi families that we never hear from, the 1 million Iraqi families who lost people, and the Syrian families, hundreds of thousands, who have indirectly been victims of Blair's hubris and the wickedness of him and Bush, ignoring the millions who told them not to do this. I mean, it's not that the rest of us didn't know. We all saw clearly that this would not end well, and it has ended so catastrophically that, frankly, The Hague is the best place for him.
How much transparency can we expect from the Chilcot inquiry?
Well, I described it when it was appointed, I described it in Parliament as a parade of establishment flunkies. And the time that they've taken and the methods they've used and the way they've gone about it has not dissuaded me from that initial view. However, the failure of Blair and his cohorts is such a gigantic elephant in the room that even Chilcot will not be able to ignore it. So some criticism, some condemnation will have to be forthcoming. The question is when.
But do you honestly believe Tony Blair could ever be tried for war crimes?
I do. I might be one of the few who do. After all, his face is the wrong colour for a start. The only people who get tried at The Hague are black African leaders. But I believe that if Tony Blair is not a war criminal, there can be no such thing as a war criminal. If you deceive the British Parliament for more than a year, which is now clear from the Powell memorandum he did, you deceive the Queen, you deceive the armed forces, you deceive the parents of all the soldiers that you send there, you deceive the public, and then you commit crimes against humanity, war crimes in the theatre itself, and the outcome is so disastrous. Well, if you don't get tried for that, what can you get tried for? 1 million people are now dead.
George Galloway, many thanks for joining us.
Okay.